In reverence to the gospel, I invite you to stand that we can hear from the gospel according to Luke. Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through it. A man was there named Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was rich. He was trying to see who Jesus was, but on account of the crowd, he could not because he was short in stature. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore tree to see him because he was going to pass that way. When Jesus came to the place, he looked up and said to him, "Zacchaeus, hurry and come down, for I must stay at your house today." So he hurried down and was happy to welcome him. All who saw it began to grumble and said, "He has gone to be the guest of one who is a sinner." Zacchaeus stood there and said to the Lord, "Look, half of my possessions, Lord, I will give to the poor. And if I have defrauded anyone of anything, I will pay back 4 times as much." Then Jesus said to him, "Today salvation has come to this house, because he too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek out and to save the lost." This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. You may be seated. When I was in 6th grade, I knew at least 2 things. Zacchaeus was a wee little man, and some of my classmates called on Jesus a lot. I learned the first at church. I learned the second at a high ropes course that had just opened in Rock Hill. The first part of the adventure that day we went as a class was the typical team building exercises. We were on the ground learning how to face a challenge together. If we all worked together, we could defeat it. It was a familiar activity. But the second part was the 30-foot high adventure, where we went from platform to platform across ropes, where we ziplined from one side to the other, where we climbed up and rappelled down a tall wall. Now, some of us were 12-year-old boys who were not about to let anyone think we were afraid of anything. They made me wear the safety equipment. I would have done it without it if they'd let me. But there were these others, these prayers. Every element, every platform, every foot of elevation gain. "Oh, Jesus. Help me, Jesus. I can't do this, Jesus." I don't think the public school intended it to be a religious experience, but it was. For all of us, it was a day to learn teamwork, that we could accomplish difficult tasks together, that with encouragement and boldness we could overcome obstacles. And some of my classmates would add, with Jesus. Don't forget, with Jesus. I won't. But also try not to forget that obstacles are not barriers. A barrier bars. It prevents passage. A 30-foot wall with nothing to grip, with no rope to climb, is a barrier. A 30-foot wall with something to hold on to, with something to pull on, is an obstacle. Obstacles deter because they make paths more difficult, but they do not prevent the way barriers do. The key is knowing the difference, so that we don't turn a surmountable obstacle into an insurmountable barrier. Like Zacchaeus, that wee little man. He had significant obstacles that made it difficult for him to get to Jesus. His height, sure, but he climbed a sycamore tree to overcome that. His pride, no doubt, but he got over that by running to, then climbing up that tree. Adults did not do those things in Jesus' day. Certainly rich tax collectors did not. But Zacchaeus did. He determined to not let physical limitations or pride keep him from Jesus. But what about his wealth and the way he attained it? That was the real obstacle. In Luke's gospel, it had already been reported that Jesus said, "Woe to the rich, and you shall not steal." 2 strikes already against the rich tax collector, who, we should note, did not get rich because the Roman government paid generous wages. He got rich because he and those who worked for him took more than the Palestinians were required to give to Rome. They kept the overage for themselves. They stole. But why woe to the rich, we ask, clutching our wallets and reassuring ourselves that the truly rich are those who have at least 10% more than whatever it is we have? Woe, Luke tells us, because of the obstacle that riches can be to trusting and following Jesus. Like in chapter 18, when Jesus invited the rich ruler to come and follow him, giving away everything he had, which made the ruler real sad, but did not make him follow. After which Jesus reported that it is easier for a camel to get through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to get into heaven. Now before we who have convinced ourselves that we are not rich, but are afraid Jesus might think we are, start shoving camels through needles, let's remember that when the disciples heard that, they asked, "Then who can be saved?" And Jesus told them the answer to all of it. What is impossible for mortals is possible for God. What is a barrier for you and me, God can make into an obstacle. And maybe that sounds blasphemous to you. Could anything be an obstacle to God? Yes. You can. I can. Zacchaeus could. The people of Jericho could be. Anyone can be. We're obstacles because God is loving enough to give us free will. God allows us the freedom to take more from our neighbor than is fair, and to pile up multiples of what we actually need while others have the minimum or less. God allows us to create obstacles to trusting that God will continue to provide for us and to trust that God indeed loves us fully. Obstacles, but not barriers. So when Jesus walked through Jericho and saw Zacchaeus in that tree and invited himself over to Zacchaeus' home, he was overcoming human obstacles. Literally, there were piles of people between Jesus and Zacchaeus, but even more difficult than that were the onlookers' judgment. Echoing the attacks the Pharisees and scribes had made when Jesus went to Levi the tax collector's banquet. In chapter 5 are the growing collection of tax collectors and sinners who are following Jesus, as shown in chapter 15. The people of Jericho watched Jesus invite himself to Zacchaeus' house, and then they grumbled. And when Zacchaeus scrambled down the tree to welcome Jesus, they grumbled again. They wanted a barrier between a sinner like Zacchaeus and a holy man like Jesus. But Jesus reduced Zacchaeus' wealth and sin and reputation to be mere obstacles. The Pharisees and the scribes wanted insurmountable barriers. They did not realize they were dealing with a God who is undeterred in making obstacles surmountable. When the barriers reduced to obstacles, Zacchaeus gave more than the religious law required. Half his wealth to the poor. If he defrauded anyone, 4 times the amount he had taken, far more than was required. Signs that the obstacles between Zacchaeus and Jesus had been torn away, or as Jesus put it, salvation had come to his house. One more example of Jesus doing what he came to do, what he was undeterred in doing, seeking out and saving the lost. We need a God who is undeterred in that. Thank God we have one. And thank God for inspiring people to be undeterred despite the obstacles they face, to be undeterred in becoming who they are called to be and doing what they are called to do. Whether it's little Zacchaeus overcoming his height and his sinful past and his others' judgment, or Jesus overcoming Zacchaeus' sinful past and reliance on riches and others' judgment of him and Zacchaeus. Or on this All Saints' Day, how about the people on our list who inspire us, who in their own imperfect ways showed us something of what it means to be undeterred in overcoming obstacles to and for Jesus? These are real people with real lives, real struggles, real challenges, and real triumphs. Thanks be to God. There are people on this list who struggled to walk, but with great effort kept showing up in worship. There's a longtime widow on this list who for years could hardly hear, only had vision in one eye. But somehow she made you feel heard and seen every time you were with her. Some on that list were far too young when they died. But her devotion to making children and youth feel cared for and loved, and his overflowing joy and witness, well, they served God fully the years that they were given to serve. Several on that list spent careers helping out our community. Their careers were given to helping other people, whether it be as teachers or nurses or lawyers. Others arrived in retirement after making significant contributions to the places where they lived before, caring for college students, ministering in small towns, serving our country, raising families, and then they jumped right in when they arrived here, doing good for this church and our area, giving some of the best years of their lives. Some, it should be said, were good golfers, while others were good at not being good golfers, which, by the way, is my goal for tomorrow's golf tournament. I'll have no trouble being not good, but I am hoping to be good at not being good tomorrow, which actually is one of the 2 points of All Saints' Day and All Saints' Sunday. The first is to recognize that all who die in the faith, all, are covered by Jesus' grace, made saints by him, despite our imperfections. And the second is that we who remain in this life need models, people we can look to so that we can remain steadfast in our faith and faithful service, people who can show us how to do the things that we are called to do. And there are people on this year's list, and people on the lists from years before who do that for us. The best examples now and then are the ones who showed compassion and love and support, which are part and parcel to following Jesus. I'm grateful whenever I've seen that enacted. I've seen it acted a lot when it comes to times of grief. So whether it's the care that goes into a service like this one, or the longest night service in December, or the frequent funerals and memorial services that we have, or it's the year-round ministry that happens with the nurture team and Stephen ministry. I see it. I see it in the love and support offered by the bereavement teams who prepare and host and clean up after reception so that the grieving can be surrounded by loved ones who give them hugs and share stories about the person they're missing. Those gatherings are beautiful gifts to the people who are in a tender time. And the ones who make it possible show wonderful hospitality and care in quiet ways. They're merciful. They're meeting people who have come up against what feels like a barrier and are showing them that it's actually an obstacle. I'm grateful for you who are showing up to what feels like barriers and turning those into obstacles. For people who've been praying for the persons affected by Hurricane Melissa and asking what else we can do. For people who are praying for our neighbors who are having real problems getting the food they need and asking what more we can do. So I want to tell you today, remind you that UMCOR, UMCOR, is the way the United Methodist Church responds to these kind of tragedies and storms. So the people of the United Methodist Church are there, and every gift, 100% of your gifts that go to hurricane relief will go to support that. And I want to tell you right now, in our community, starting today, we're stuffing a bus with non-perishable foods so that by the end of the week, we can take a bus full of food to places, ministries that will get that food into the hands of those who need it most. It's just 2 ways, but it's real ways. Grief, hurricanes, hunger, they're big obstacles, but they're not insurmountable. Because of God and God's work through people like you. Compassionate, loving, supportive people who are undeterred in their caring for others in Jesus' name. Saints, you might say. So I invite you to keep being saints. Keep following the example of the saints before us. Keep following Jesus, who calls us to ministry like that.